Okay, Danny, gefilte, you wave when you get a piece of, she's called gefilte because carp. Gefilte fish is made of carp. And Liora, when you get a sheep, wave. Everyone's like, you've all been to the bathroom, everyone's okay, you're okay for the next hour, everyone good? You don't want to go quickly? Liferge. Stay one here. Bed? Take the opportunity to say goodbye. Everyone say goodbye. Bye, phones. Bye. Hannah, say goodbye. Did they take? They took Russian blood. They took Russian blood. Okay. Good job. Okay, ladies, if you could put your phones away. Bye. Okay, this share of the 20th of Tevet 5784 is dedicated in loving memory of Miriam, Bat, Chaim, and Bela. She passed away this past Thursday. Actually, her granddaughter was sitting just here last week at Shiur Klali, Ashley Finson. So the beloved grandmother of our Bulgarians. So Shiur Klali will be in her memory. It's still during the Shiva. So we have a new sefer to start, Sefer Shemot. I want to introduce the sefer through the introductions of three main mefarshim and go off in a tangent as I do. The first is the introduction of the Netziv, the Emek Davar. We're not going chronologically. The second is the introduction of the Ramban, and the third is the introduction of Abarbanel. Introductions by general thing can either be a definition of the book in its own right, or a definition of the book in contrast to the other books. Meaning we can have a commentator who will look at Sefer Shemot and define Sefer Shemot as Sefer Shemot, like the Ramban will. Or we can have a commentator who will look at Sefer Shemot and define Sefer Shemot in the context of Sefer Bereshit, as is the Netziv and the Abarbanel. So let's start with the Netziv. זה הספר נקרא בפי בעלי המדרש ספר שמות. So we know there are different names for the Chumashim, right? Because we know the Sefer Shemot is called Exodus. But Exodus is not a translation for Shemot. Shemot means names. Kedeta b'Bereshit Rabbah Perek Gimel, Vayihi or Neged Sefer Shemot. V'chein b'harbe makomot. In many places, this book is called Sefer Shemot. The Haramban, who we'll see, please God, after this, Sofa Sefer Karu Sefer HaGeula. He calls Sefer Shemot the book of Geula. Zulat Rabbeinu Bahag Besof Sifro HaKadosh Yikre'ehu Sefer Sheni. But the Netziv is interested in the comments of the Baal Halachot Gedolot, who calls Sefer Shemot Sefer Sheni, the second book. So you'll think, big deal, right? I mean, it is the second book. Problem is, he doesn't call Vayikra Sefer Shlishi. And he doesn't call Bamidbar Sefer Revi'i, and he doesn't call Devarim Sefer Chamishi. He just calls Shemot Sefer Sheni. The Kachashiv Chamisha Chumshei Torah Sefer Bereshit v'Chumash Sheni. The Sefer Kohanim is Vayikra, the Chumash HaPekudim is Bamidbar, or Mishnah Torah is Devarim. וככה בסוטה דף ל"ו עמוד ב' לא כדרך שחלוקים בחומש הפקודים אלא כדרך שחלוקים בחומש שני. It's called Chumash Sheni. Why is it called Chumash Sheni? If we're going to count them all, we'll call Bereshit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we don't. We just call Shemot Chumash Sheni. Why is it called the second book? בשו"ת דרבותינו ניתן ללמדנו בינה שלא בחינם שינו השם בזה הספר. So the Netziv wants to try and explain why Dafka Shemot was called Sefer Sheni and none of the other books were called by numbers. והיה לרבותינו לקרוא לכולם במספר חומש שני ושלישי, or Chumash Shemot. They could have called it Shemot, or all of them by number. או על העניין המסוים שבו כמו יציאת מצרים או מתן תורה, you could call it יציאת מצרים, the book of Exodus, or מתן תורה, כמו שקורא ספר במדבר, ספר הפקודים. במדבר is called the book of Numbers because there are numbers at the beginning of במדבר, the numbers at the end of במדבר. או כמו שכתוב במקומו התם. I've written about it there. אלא בא ללמדנו דזה הספר בייחוד הוא שני, לספר ראשית. Says Netziv, this book is specifically the second book, and we're defining Shemot in the context of Bereshit. Ki hu chelek sheni mizeh hasefer, because it's the second part of Bereshit, meaning Shemot is part of Bereshit, it's part of creation. וכמאמרם ז"ל בראשית בשביל ישראל שנקראו ראשית פירוש תכלית העולם בכלל. The world was created for Israel, the world was created for Torah, and therefore until Torah is established in the world, creation is not over. הוא שיהיה אומה אחת חלק השם עמו, וזה לא נשלם עד שיצאו ישראל ממצרים, ובא לתכליתם שיהיו לצורה אחרת במה שקיבלו עליהם עוד תורה ומצוות. So creation isn't over until there is a people that has come out of Egypt, received the Torah. The Torah is an inherent part of creation. ובזה נכלל גם זה התכלית שהוא ראויים להיות לאור גויים לעמידם על ידיעת אלוהי עולם. And through the Torah, the nation of Israel can be a light upon nations and make the world aware of the creator of the universe. I've explained this inside the Sefer in Perek Yud Nun Aleph al pasuk Yatsu bnei Yisrael ad tzivotam, וכמו שכתוב בספר ישעיהו מ"ו ואצרח היינו שנתתי לך צורה מיוחדת ואתנך לברית עם. I've made a brit with you to go out and teach the Torah to the world. וכמו שכתב בביא עוזר המקרא בהרחב דבר. וזהו תכלית הבריאה שנברא לכבודו יתברך, כמו שכתוב, כל הנקרא בשמי ולכבודי בראתיו, everything I created for myself. You can sometimes go to a mall and you can see a raffle that they're going to have, and there's this car standing in the middle of the mall. And I've always wondered, what if a Meshuggah got in the car and drove it out? What would happen? So I assumed, I've never checked this, that they've taken the engine out of the car, or they've taken something critical out of the car. Maybe they haven't. Maybe I should try doing it. But so you can, and I've made this mistake in purchasing a car in the past, be fooled by the external resemblance of the thing that you're looking at. So if someone's selling a second-hand car, they can put in a beautiful music player and they can polish it up on the outside, and the car won't work because the engine's broken. Or the car will break down within a few weeks of you driving it, and it's lost its entire value because no one wants a piece of tin that looks nice if it doesn't move. The message of the Netziv here is that creation has to be looked at in two ways, possibly three ways if we add the Ramban into Bereshit. The beginning of Bereshit is the creation of the world. The creation of the world, it would appear, and this came up with some discussions this week that I had with Hannah, the creation of the world is probably from Perek Aleph to Perek Yud Aleph. Everything from Bereshit through to Migdal Bavel is not what it appears to be. It's a developing situation. What is clear is that the stories after that, from Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, those are exactly what they appear to be with all the lessons therein. But there are differences of opinions in our Rishonim about how to understand Bereshit, the story of Bereshit, how to understand Migdal Bavel, how to understand these stories. Some say as they happen, some understand them in a different way. But certainly the first 11 chapters of Bereshit are about the physical creation of the world and how the world became to what it is today. After that, we have another part of Bereshit, which is Ma'aseh Avot Siman Levanim, like the Ramban says, which is the acts of the Avot, setting patterns in the world, things that we don't fully understand, of the stories of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, and all the Shvatim. And now says the Netziv, but until the people get the Torah, the world has no purpose to it. The Torah is God's law. I said last week, in a rather loud voice, my son said, I said last week that all of the religions in the world, all of the monotheistic religions in the world, accept the Old Testament as being the original testament. It is the most popular book read in the world, has been for years. So the point here is critical. Says in Netziv, basing himself on a midrash in Shabbat, Vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom hashishi. So the Mefarshim ask on that pasuk, Vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom hashishi. Why does it have a hey, hashishi? If you look at all the other names of the days, it's Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Echad, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi'i. Not Hasheni, not Hashlishi. What's Hashishi? The Gemara in Shabbat says that creation was made conditional to the sixth day, not the sixth day of creation, the sixth day of Sivan. And God said, if eventually they accept the Torah, mutav, that's fine. Ve'im lo, and if the Torah is not accepted, if the Torah does not come to be a reality in the world, achzir et ha'olam letohu vavohu. I will send the world into confusion. My Rebbe always used to say on that midrash, God doesn't say, I will return the world to nothing. He says, I will return the world to confusion. There can't be a world without Torah, but it's a very confused world. So the Netziv says that Torah is the essential manoah of the world. There has to be Torah in this world. All of Sefer Shemot is about Kabbalat HaTorah, the process and the reaching of Kabbalat HaTorah. And therefore it's Sefer Sheni. It's part of the process of Bereshit. You know, when you build a house, please God, you'll build a house in Israel. I would think that would be obvious. When my wife built our house, the house went up really, really quickly. Really, really quickly. And I thought, yeah, but the builder said it was going to take a year. And the structure on the outside was up within a month and a half. What I didn't realize, because I never built a house before, is that all the work on the house is on the inside. It's the heating, it's the plumbing, it's the electricity, it's the insulation. That's the work in a house. To put up the bricks and mortar, that has to be done. They have to be foundations and they have to build. That takes time, but not most of the time. Most of the time is the inside work, and then you can't believe it, right? That the structure went up so quickly. But the inside of the house takes much longer. That's the message of the Netziv. There is a creation. There is a world that comes into being in 6 days, however we want to interpret the 6 days. There is a pattern in the world. But the infrastructure of the world, what the world is really about, where the world is meant to be going, the values that our Torah gives, the 10 Commandments, which are the 10 Commandments for everyone, which the Torah gives, that's the infrastructure. You think about yourselves as human beings. All the efforts made on us as we're growing up in our formative years are to do with our physical health. You don't sit down with a 2-month-old and start discussing a Rambam. You're trying to get them to eat. They should know how to swallow. They should know how to coordinate their hands, to walk, to talk. The content of the human being that we are bringing up happens later on. It's at a second stage. There's a physical creation. Now, if you're just an animal, that's it, right? If you've ever seen the wonderful... ever experienced a wonderful birth of a calf, which I've seen many times when I worked in the cow shed in kibbutz. The calf comes out almost ready. The cow licks the afterbirth off it, and it kind of gets up, stumbles a little bit like Bambi, and then kind of walks around. And you feel what a ridiculous human being I am. I spent the first 2 years sitting in a chair, opening up my eyes, closing, and burping. That's really what I did for the first 2 years of my life. This calf is already walking around the refet after a day. A little bit of a stumble, but it's quite incredible. Why? Because there's nothing else to do with it. The calf's not going to have Musa drashas. It's not going to have a Musa shir with king cow, and it's not going to have its Rebbe cows. It's just going to be a calf, and it's going to either turn into a steak or it's going to provide milk. That's it's got a choice. One of the two things. I apologize to the vegetarians in the room. It might become a soya schnitzel. But either way, but when it's a human being, a lot of effort is on the outside at the beginning. But then at some stage, as the chinuch comes in, as we're getting older, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, values, Torah, that takes much longer. People might not even know where they are until your age now. Just a starting point. And that's the Netziv's message. Creation of the world has two parts to it. The beautiful world that we see outside is a beautiful world. But as we know, as we have experienced for the last 2.5 months, if wicked people run the world, there is no world. When there is evil running the world, there is no world. As one of my students pointed out to me, one of my students who's in college pointed out to me that people like saying in college in America, go Iran. I don't think they realize that Iran wants to destroy America too. But they'll work it out at some stage. I hope not too late they work it out, but they'll work it out at some stage. Evil is in the world. There's no content in the world. That's a problem. I remember standing outside the gas chambers of Majdanek many years ago, and it was snowing, and it was very, very pretty. It was soft snow, and the entire camp was covered in white. You couldn't see the camp, but we were standing next to the gas chambers. So I pointed out to the girls that God made this. God made the white. He made the snow. And man made this. He made the gas chambers. That's what man did. The content of the world is critical. So the Netziv's message here in understanding Sefer Shemot, that it's Sefer Sheni, but without Sefer Sheni, there's no creation. You can't just create something on the outside. It's no good. You know that by now. You know that anything that looks good but isn't good inside is not good enough. Go to the Ramban. You're thinking it's a short page, we're getting out early. No way. No way, ladies. Don't even think about it. Have a look at the Ramban. Now the Ramban, as opposed to the Netziv defines Shemot in context of Bereshit. The Ramban defines Shemot in the context of Shemot. He doesn't talk about Bereshit. Hishlima katuv sefer Bereshit, shuv sefer Yetzira b'chidush ha'olam Yisrael kol notzar b'mikrei ha'avot shem kinyan Yetzira. Everything in Bereshit is about creation. Either it's a physical creation of the world, or It's Ma'aseh Avot Siman Levanim. It's creation through the actions of our forefathers, setting the trends for the future. Because that's what Ma'aseh Avot Siman Levanim is. The things that happened to Abraham happened in the future, things that happened to Yitzhak and to Yaakov and Yosef. So this is different from the Netziv. Okay, he's before the Netziv. It's different from the Netziv. It's a different book. It's not an addition to it. It's a different book of what happened after these allusions of Maaseh Avot Siman Levanim. Hagalut harishon hanigzar beperush u'geula mimenu. Let's talk about Rabbeinu. Galut v'geula. But I'm sure what I say isn't what he says. I take an educated guess. Galut v'geula. The Ramban says that the book of Shemot is about Galut, the first exile. The first exile of the Jewish people. We go down to Egypt, and it's not an obvious prototype of exile, because it's not clear that exile in the book of Shemot is a punishment. We could say it's a punishment according to the Gemara in the Darim Daf Lamed Bet, because Abraham questioned God at Brit Bein Abatarim. But we could say it's a punishment like the Abarbanel says because of the selling of Yosef. But it doesn't appear to be an immediate consequence of actions of the people who are actually suffering in the book of Shemot. The people suffering in the book of Shemot had nothing to do with Mechirat Yosef, and they had nothing to do with the comments of Avraham in Brit Bein Abatarim. They're just regular Jews being oppressed for 210 years. There is slavery, and possibly the last 80 years of those 210 years was real oppression, depending on different Perushim. That's Galut, that's the exile. What's Geula then? Now, in a school that is fundamentally religious Zionist, Geula is here. Geula is a place. This is Geula. But you know the book of Shemot, and the book of Shemot does not end with the Jewish people in Israel. So I have two things to say here. Number one, so let me suggest that Geula is Matan Torah. Fair enough. It's a new way of life. The thing is, if Geula is Matan Torah, why doesn't the book of Shemot finish in Parashat Yitro? Maybe Parashat Mishpatim, because it is probably clear that Parashat Mishpatim is part of Matan Torah. The fact that Naaseh v'Nishma is written at the end of Parashat Mishpatim. Chapter verse, Naaseh v'Nishma, 24/7. You can't forget that, right? Naaseh v'Nishma is 24/7. Thank you to Robbie Rothenberg. 24/7, okay? That chapter and verse. You can't forget, Naaseh v'Nishma is 24/7. But that's at the end of Parashat Mishpatim. So Mishpatim goes with Yitro. So if Geula is Matan Torah, why doesn't the book of Shemot finish with Parashat Mishpatim? It doesn't finish there, by the way, for those of you who are a bit tired. After Mishpatim, we have Truma Tetzaveh, Ki Tisa, and Vayakel Pikude. We have another 5 parashas, which are essentially, without the hiccup of the Chet HaEgel and Ki Tisa, are essentially parashas on the Mishkan. What's the Mishkan got to do with Geula? No? Rhetorical. A rhetorical no. It's so important. Says the Ramban, we're learning Ramban. Says the Ramban, Perek Cafe, have a look at it tonight. We're finished with going out Monday night, so let's finish. Dad won't let you use the card anymore. So it doesn't work. It doesn't swipe. So, yes, it does. So, why is Mishkan Geula? Such an important lesson. The Ramban says at the beginning of Perek Kafei, if I were to take you on a tiyul today, which is unlikely for a number of reasons. Number one, we're not going to tiyul on Monday night. And number two, I'm not going on tiyul either. Okay, so for both reasons, we're not going. Let's say we're going to a place that we're not going to get parental permission for. We're going to the Sinai Desert. Okay, we're not getting, because there are jihad there, so we're not going there. Okay, so we're not going to the Sinai Desert. But let's say we were going to the Sinai Desert. Let's say that I could show you where Har Sinai was. And let's say that I didn't come, just the mashgichot and madrichot took you. And let's say it's really hot and some of you want to sunbathe. Can you sunbathe on the top of Har Sinai? Absolutely yes. There's no kedusha there at all. You can play football there, have a barbecue, you can do whatever you want. If you could identify Rav Goren, who was the chief rabbi of the army and the chief rabbi of Israel, he was of the opinion that he had identified Har Sinai. He got a Sefer Torah and walked up Har Sinai. He did. There's a picture of it in his book. There's a biography of Rav. He was a very outspoken person. Rav Goren, you should know. You should read the book. Rav Goren complained to Arik Sharon. Alav Hashem was the head of Samchanim, was the head of paratroopers, and there was no kosher food for the Samchanim. And Rav Goren complained to Arik Sharon. He said, "There's no kosher food for the Samchanim." So Arik Sharon said, "There are no from boys in Samchanim. They don't need kosher food." So Rav Goren said to Arik Sharon, true story, Rav Goren said to Arik Sharon, if one from paratrooper joins the paratroopers, will there be kosher food? They said yes. So he jumped. He jumped out of the plane. Rav Goren jumped out of the plane, broke a leg. And Arik Sharon was as good to his word, and he gave kosher food to someone. One other story about Rav Goren, these are facts. This country is unbelievable. Rav Goren conquered Hebron on his own. In the 6-day war, Rav Goren got into a jeep. He thought that Hebron would be conquered. He drove past the front line without knowing, arrived at Ma'arat HaMachpelah in his jeep, and the Mufti came out waving a white flag. It's mamash a true story. Rav Goren captured Hebron on his own, an incredible. He went to Har Sinai. But ladies, there's a point to this. You go to Har Sinai today, there's no kedusha to Har Sinai. Isn't that strange? The greatest revelation on earth took place at Har Sinai. There's no kedusha to Har Sinai. Where did it go? Says the Ramban at the beginning, open it up, says the first Ramban, Perek Kafei in Shemot, says, all the kedusha from Har Sinai, where did it go? It went into the Mishkan. This is undefined. It is so important that what happens? Har Sinai goes into the Mishkan. What is a Mishkan? A Mishkan is a walking Har Sinai. You understand what Galut is now? Galut means when you haven't got a walking Har Sinai. When you don't have a Mikdash, you don't have a dynamic Har Sinai. You know what Galut is? Look at how stagnating Orthodox Jewry is today, because there is no dynamic, because we can't move. We can't move because we don't have a Mikdash. We don't have a dynamic Mikdash. The Mishkan is the Geula. Why is it the Mishkan? This is an incredibly important message for all of us. Har Sinai was a one-off. One-offs aren't important in life. They're only important if they become permanent. If Har Sinai was one event, what's the big deal? It's a revelation. Then they went to Chet HaEgel. That the Mishkan means that you take something that was a one-off and you make it permanent. What does the pasuk say in Mizmor Kaf Daled? Mi ya'aleh b'har Hashem. Who will ascend the house, the mountain of God? Umi yakum. Who will stay there? One thing is to ascend. The other thing is to stay there. If you can't stay there, the ascension was more or less pointless. So the book of Shemot can't finish with Yitro, because if it finishes with Yitro, that was just a one-off. The Geula is only complete when we have a permanent Matan Torah in the form of the Mishkan. And then if you have a look, it's a remarkable Ramban. To me, it makes so much sense. The Ramban is different from Rashi. The Ramban doesn't understand the Mishkan as being because of Chet HaEgel. He sees the Mishkan as being the automatic transition from Matan Torah, the one-off, to to Mishkan. I often ask girls here at the end of the year, so is your year in Israel going to be a Mishkan, or is it going to be Matan Torah? Is it going to be a one-off memory, or is it going to be the foundation stone of your future? In my life, it was a foundation stone of my future. My Rosh Hashiva is still on the wall in my room. I still feed off it. But for many people, a year in Israel ends up being a collection of photographs and memories. Then it was just a Matan Torah. It was one great event. The question is if you're able to take one great event and transition it into something permanent, something, and that's to do with every experience we have. Every experience we go through is whether we can turn it into something permanent in our lives. And so the Ramban says Sefer Shemot is Galut to Geula, and Geula is defined here by Mishkan. But I had a thought here. This is just my own thought. Why is Galut called Galut? So we translate the word Galut into exile. But what is legalot? To reveal. Isn't that interesting? Like a detrimental negative word, galut, exile, really means legalot. Why is Megillat Esther called Megillat Esther? Why do you think? Because the entire Megillah took 9 years, was not immediately obvious to people that something special was happening. Legalot et hahester. When you read the Megillah in 45 minutes, you reveal that which is hidden. Not necessarily a Megillah written by Esther the woman, but legalot et hahester is to reveal that which is hidden. And then I had another thought, because obviously I am, as I'm sure you are, totally immersed in what's happening in my homeland. And I wanted to suggest like this. Why would I connect galut, exile, with legalot, to reveal? I feel that is when we are pushed and when we are in our most difficult predicaments that we find out who we are. Galut is megaleh. That you discover a lot of things about yourself that when life is running its regular path, you kind of brush over. You don't notice. You know, you have breakfast, you go to work, you have lunch, whatever, you just go through the day and you do what you're doing. And every so often, things happen in life and they push you into a corner. And you're not able to just carry on with routine because reality doesn't let you do that. It's generally, I think, very hard to know who we are. We are all Oscar winners in our ability to act. Every single one of us. Nothing to do with Hollywood. We're always acting. We're always putting on a face, playing out a role, all the time. The way extraordinary happens, you can't act anymore because you're forced into yourself. I never thought about this before. I thought about it on the way to work this morning. And it wasn't even triggered by the shiur I was listening to. It just came to my mind. I turned the shiur off just as I was parking and I send something to Bogrot every morning, and I just have this thought, why is it called? Never thought about it before, but the truth is, and I believe it to be correct, and I think you've experienced some of what I've experienced, and I think you know it to be correct. You know, you're putting that out of your comfort zone, then you have to be yourself, because yourself won't let you act anymore because you can't act. Either you're too worried or you're too upset, or you're too frustrated or you're too scared. You can't act. You can only act when things are normal. So perhaps we could say that Galut will bring you to Geula on a micro level. That if through that pressure, through being pushed into a corner, there is a silver lining on that cloud. You discover who you are. I told you, all of you, throughout this period of time, that you will look back at this period of time and you'll never forget it, not because of the horrors, but because of the growth, because of the self-discovery, because these aren't things that we're used to. And therefore we can't act. We can act if we have our regular role. And therefore Galut, exile, this suffering, this oppression, and it brings the good and the bad. I went to have a haircut today. I'm sure you can tell because my son's coming out, so I can cut my hair because my son's coming out. And so the barber is like a taxi driver. He knows, he's got all the information in the world. So you have to sit there listening to all the unpublished news as he's cutting your hair. And obviously it has to be very quick because I'm sure you can imagine my haircuts on a long project. It's we just decide which hair to cut and we're done. And he was telling me, and I didn't know this, I wish I didn't know this now. He was telling me that they just caught a group of thieves who went down to where the festival took place and stole the cars of murdered people. It doesn't just reveal good, it reveals terrible things as well. Can you believe that that's what would be going through someone's mind where they hear that people are dead, to go down where they were killed and steal their cars? They got caught. Thank God they got caught. But it brings out the good in people, brings out the bad in people. It's the most. Some people would never even discover themselves if they were never going through those situations. I don't think Oskar Schindler would have ever been Oskar Schindler had he not been where he was. He would have just been a womanizer, a greedy man who loved drink for the rest of his life. But a certain situation happened, which was galut, which was oppression, which was suffering, and he revealed something in himself. I do believe, ladies, that our entire life is about this. It's about revealing ourselves. It's about legalot. And nothing in the Jewish language is by accident. So galut and legalot are very much connected. So that's the Ramban. So we have the Ramban, the last bit was just me. The Ramban doesn't say that. He talks about galut to geula, but I think it is inherent within the Ramban that geula isn't just Matan Torah. Geula is the end of the book. And again, geula, you can connect what I said to the Ramban because the exile, the suffering enables the people to get the geula, enables them to come to truth, which is the Torah. So it's galut and geula, but geula isn't a one-off. It's not a one-off. It's something that has to be worked on. If we don't work on it, it won't be. It has to be worked on. And that you can't just have Matan Torah. There is no such thing. I want to be inspired. I want to have a great shir, and I want to have a great. You have a great shir, and that doesn't stop you from doing an Aveira the next day. It doesn't stop you. Things have to be built on. He seems to be very technical, the Abba now. He's got an introduction to Sefer Shemot, and again, this is. He says the Fisher Sefer Bereshit Yached LeSefer HaMaasim VaHatain VeEi VeAvraham Yitzchak VeYaakov VaNav L'Shai Yechidei Segula. Bereshit is a book about great people, Gedolei Ha'umah, great men and great women. There is no record in Bereshit about the masses. The only reference we have, Rashi says that Avram at the beginning of Lech Lecha was converting the masses. But we don't know where they went. They disappeared off the face of the earth because they don't go down to Egypt. Right? At the end of Parshat Vayechi, we have a list of 70 souls that went down to Egypt. It's just Bnei Yisrael, Bnei Yaakov, which is now Bnei Yisrael. These people, the Aram, the Gaia, have disappeared. So the book of Bereshit is a book of very great individuals. Now, I said to you that And I've said it before, so I'm not going to dwell on this. I want to take it a stage further. The difference between peoples that last and peoples that don't last is the ability to transition from great individuals to the masses. Communism, was never able to do that. They had ideologues like Trotsky and Marx and Lenin, not Stalin. Stalin wasn't an ideologue. Stalin believed in Stalin. Communism failed, and Russia cannot be quoted as an example of communism because it was never really communist. But why? Because they weren't able to transition the ideal to the masses. They couldn't make the masses believe in communism. And so it deteriorated into a dictatorship and eventually fell apart in our time. Doesn't exist anymore. Putin's Russia has nothing to do with communism, not an iota of communism. So for a belief to exist, for it to succeed, it needs to transition from its great leaders to the masses. The book of Shemot says the Abarbanel is a book about the people. It's not a book about individuals. And it's a book about taking the ideas of the giants and making it into an ideology of the people through Torah. Torah is taking the ideals of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rachel, Leah, and making it a way of life through Torah. But then I had one question. If the Abarbanel is right, and it's hard to disagree with him, right? Because the book of Shemot is about the people. Omnam, there's one person in the book who is the star, and from the minute his name is mentioned, there's only one parsha from then on to the end of the whole Torah where his name isn't mentioned. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. But it's about our people. It's a story of our people. So why is it called Shemot? I think that's a good question. Why is it called Shemot? Shemot means names. But a people doesn't have names. A people is a people, right? So have a look at Rav Amital. I think I actually heard this Sikha live, but ואלה שמות בני ישראל הבאים מצרים מאת יעקב איש וביתו באו ראובן שמעון לוי ויהודה יששכר זבולון ובנימין דן נפתלי גד ואשר ויהי כל נפש יוצא ירך יעקב 70 נפש. על מנת לבאר לשם מה חוזרת התורה מציינת את שמות בני ישראל לאחר שכבר הזכירו אותם בפרשת ויגש. Another question which we're not dealing particularly with here is that in Parashat Vayigash, this list is given in Parashat Vayigash. When Yaakov and his sons go down to meet Yosef, all of the names are given. So why mention them again? They didn't go anywhere in between. So, well, they went, but they came back, right? So he quotes the following midrash, Rav Amital. I want to go back to my question. My question was, if this is like the Abarbanel says, this book is a transition from individuals to a nation, why is it called Shemot? So the midrash says, even though the Torah counts them by name, it counts them also when they die. To reflect that God loves his people and they are like stars. He brings them out in numbers and names. Go over the page. Mispar v'shem, second paragraph. Mispar, a number, miyatzeg hamoniyut. It reflects masses. You have a number, a mass number. Hasamiyut is just a number. Yechidot enoshiyot shedomot veitim av shavot zo lezo. That's what the Germans did in Auschwitz, right? They gave us numbers. We're just a number. We don't have a character. We don't have a personage. We're just a number. Shem, a name, miyatzeg et hamiyuchad b'chol adam. A shame is something that is special about each person. Spend a lot of time thinking about the name for your child, like a little world. A name differentiates you from other people. A number dissolves your independence. Am Yisrael nimshal lekochavim. We are compared to stars. Kol kochav harehu olam b'fnei atzmo. Now we know, everyone in this room knows, that a star isn't a little dot in the sky. The sun is a star. I think it's the smallest star, right? It's the smallest star, the sun, I think. It's a world in its own right. Kol kochav miuchad v'shoneh mikol acherim. Each star is different from the other. But when you look at the stars from a distance, they all look to be the same. But if you were ever to reach the star, which we're not going to, you would see that each star is different. Kach gam Yisrael. So why is the mashal of Israel to a kochav? Each one of us has a specific character. It's specific only to you. There is no one else in the world ever with the same fingerprints as you. No one. You are the only you there has ever been. You don't need chevra to justify you. That's a fact of creation. Everyone has his own name. Today we create things en masse. There is no more a quality or a value given to something which is made individually. Even furniture is made through factories, through machines. It's not handmade. There are companies that are making thousands of particles a day. And they all look exactly the same. Even amongst us, there is this urge to be like everyone else, to look like everyone else. To sing like everyone else, to think and learn like everybody else. There is this atmosphere of impersonating people. We're impersonating each other. You watch people walking on the street. There is a danger that through this impersonation, this mass impersonation, that we will lose the individual image that we have. It's the same with clothes. Harav Lichtenstein הביא פעם מדבריו של ההיסטוריון והסופר Thomas Carlyle. He quotes Thomas Carlyle to say, listen to this quote, it's such a profound quote. הבגדים עשו אותנו לאנשים, clothes made us into men. עלינו להיזהר לבל יהפכו אותנו לקולבים. We should be careful that they don't turn us into hangers, into clothes hangers. Clothes turned us into men. We should be careful not to become hangers of those clothes, lose the personage behind the clothes. A son is worthy to learn from his father, but not to impersonate his father, not to copy his father, to learn from his father, and then to be himself. Herself. You don't just do what your father did because he's your father. You learn from your father, and then you do it with your own tune. Rabbi Mital always used to say, I do not want as a rabbi to create harbe amitalim. He quotes it here, right? I don't want shiyu amitalim. I don't want lots of little Rabbi Mitals running around. They said what was special about Rabbi Yisrael Salant is that every one of his Talmidim turned out different. You have to be careful when we're hanging around with people not to lose our independence or individuality. We are transitioning to a nation, but a nation with Shemot, with names, where everyone in the nation is an individual. Learn from the Chanukiah. The Chanukiah, we light candles next to each other each day. but it's not allowed to become a bonfire. It becomes a bonfire, it's personal. Each candle has to be identifiable as a separate candle, standing together, but as a separate candle. So we're transitioning into being a nation, but Khalila, any of us should ever lose our individuality, who we are. Not copying other people, and not Khalila copying ourselves. בעבר ניתן היה לספר על עולמם של צדיקים וגדולים ועל התנהגותיהם. כיום כמעט שלא ניתן עוד לדבר על מנהג של צדיק פלוני. There used to be special stories about special people, but now everyone's just the same story. על אדם לדעת את דרכו. We have to know our way. This is also part of our geula, is to know our way. That's why we're here, ladies. We're here to try and work out our way. What is special about me? Not to look at anyone else. What is special about me? What is good for me? Not to spend our lives impersonating other people. I don't want to watch films. I want them to make a film about me. It won't be particularly interesting. It will be called Shiur Klali. And then you can have Shiur Klali 2, Shiur Klali 3, you can have lots of Shiur Klalis. But what would you prefer? Would you prefer spend your life watching other great people? Or do you want to be a great person? You are a great person, but do you want to develop that great personage? אמנם כן, בשלבים מוקדמים צריך הוא לקבל את היסודות המקובלים הסטנדרטיים. There are basic standards that we stand by. אך אחר כך צריך כל אדם להתפתח בדרך המיוחדת שלו. But then you have to develop you, which is you and only you. There's no one else that will never, ever be anyone else. Only you. So we are a people, but we are Shemot. We have to be Shemot. And listen to this graph, what the Vilna Gaon says. כי לכל אדם ואדם יש לו דרך בפני עצמו. Every person has his own way. ללך בו. כי אין דעתם דומה זה לזה. None of us have exactly the same opinions. ואין פרצופיהם דומים זה לזה. And none of us look alike. We all look slightly different. Even our Horowitz girls look slightly different. If you know them well enough, you can tell an Anna from a Jessie. They're with family. But you can tell, you don't have to look for them. You can tell an Anna from a Jessie, even though they seem to be, they're not identical. And anyone who knows them knows they're not identical. ואין טבע שני בני אדם שווים, והיה הנביא אומר על פי משפט, הנבואה דרכו שילך בה לפי שורש נשמתו. And Navi was able to identify a person according to the root of their soul, not by the way they looked on the outside, whether they had long hair or short hair, or whether they were wearing the latest coat or the latest sweater. לפעמים כשהיו ישראל לנביאים כפליים מיוצאי מצרים, הם היו הולכים אל הנביאים, והנביאים גילה לכל אחד את מיוחד שבו. There used to be a time where people went to a Navi had Ruach HaKodesh, a Navi could tell you about yourself. You don't have that anymore. So we have to perhaps, this is all to do with Geula, Akalut, but we have to perhaps put immense effort into self-discovery, into self-belief, into the knowledge that not one of us is the same, and that not one of us is superfluous. Not one of us is superfluous. It doesn't matter whether you're in part of a clique or not part of a clique. It doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with other people. It's got to do with Ribono Shel Olam, who brought you into this world and gave you an neshama. That's what's important. If God reckons I'm important, I'm important. It doesn't matter whether the chevra think I'm important, which is lucky for me, right? But it doesn't really matter, because if God gave me a neshama, if God breathed into this body, it means that I have a breath of God in my body. And it doesn't matter how many SATs I did. It doesn't matter whether I go into Harvard or Princeton, or I only know these places now because they're all crazies and they ought to be jailed, right? But their views of genocide and so on and so forth. But it doesn't matter, ladies. It doesn't matter. Look inwards. I think this is an incredible answer to that question that I asked. It's not the question he asked. But if the Abarbanel is right, and I think he is right, our third definition is that the book of Shemot is about the masses. Why is it called Shemot? Because however much of a people we are all individuals within that people. And we all have something to give to that people. On a personal note, I can tell you, I am very excited. I have, if this wasn't dedicated this year, I would have dedicated it to my son's unit. You're invited tomorrow. If you're back by 6 o'clock, we'll be at the hotel, my son's unit. They've been in Gaza for 9 weeks, ladies. They've been in Gaza for 9 weeks. They've been fighting. And I've been battling with myself, as I think you know, because I've shared it with you. And my colleagues know as well. What am I exactly giving? And you do know, because I told you that I have been trying, I gave up, but I tried for 6 weeks to convince the army to take me in. To no avail. Why are you laughing? It's a very sensitive point. And I realized after a certain period of time that I needed to learn this Rav Amital. Not everyone's contribution is the same. I can't do what my son's done. I wrote him a long letter yesterday, and to all of our nephews, part of whom have come out of Gaza, said that we're forever indebted to them for what they've done. And it seems strange that the people who are meant to be looking after them are being looked after by them. But at the same time, if I remind myself of Rav Amital, so instead of me trying to be them all the time, because I just want to be them all the time, so Rav Amital is saying, no, you've got to be you. And your job, David Milster, is not to fight in the Israeli army at the moment. Your job, I fought in the Israeli army. Not an ideological comment. I was in the army, but no, it's not my job. It's not my job is to do something else. I needed to see this Rav Amital, or remember this Rav Amital maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. I realized it because the army made me realize it, because they said, just stop phoning. I'm going to cut off we're going to block your number. Stop bothering us. We're trying to run a war and answering your petty request to dress up in green and fire water pistols or whatever. So the answer is Shemot. We all have names. We all have a role to play. Your job, ladies, is critical. Is to look inwards and to find that role. And then play it like it's never been played before. And you never need to imitate anyone. You can learn from people, but you don't need to imitate people. You are worthy in your own right because you are. Okay? You go. I'll take some of these actually because